Let's continue the topic of why so many people in China are starting their own business now. In my last video, I told the story of my friend, Mr. A, who's on his third venture of being an entrepreneur. Now let me tell you the story of Mr. B, a family member who also decided to no longer work for an employer. Mr. B graduated from a good university, and his first job after graduating from college was with Huawei, one of the biggest tech companies in China. Mr. B's last job was with a Fortune 500 German SaaS company in China. Right before the Chinese New Year in 2024, he got laid off. He struggled to find a new job for a while. He's 49 now. 2 years ago, when he lost his job, he was 47. The dilemma he faced may sound familiar to many in China. At 47, he was already in a pretty senior position at his company and made good salaries. If you have seen job descriptions, no matter for what job or what industry, you know I'm right when I say employers rarely look for candidates with more than 15 years of experience. On some rare occasions, I've seen companies looking for candidates with over 20 years of experience, but that only happens once in a blue moon. We all know that most organizations have a pyramid structure. Corporations are no exception. There are very few positions at the top, and there's only one CEO for each company. So the first reason why Mr. B decided not to look for a job is that there are very few jobs at his level to begin with. In an expanding economy like China has been for the past few decades, there were an abundance of opportunities. If you lose your job at company X due to a reorganization, there's a company Y tomorrow opening new offices in China, and company Y may be looking for a senior executive there. There is constant demand, even for corporate ladder climbers at the top of the ladders. However, in a stagnating economy, or in an economy that's not growing its GDP at double digits every year, there's little demand for senior executives. I'm in no way saying that China's economy is not growing. It is. In 2025, China's GDP grew 5% year on year, even with the crisis in the real estate industry. However, the growth has slowed down. On top of that, foreign companies are leaving China or reducing its presence here. To name a few, Samsung has closed its last Chinese smartphone factory in 2029. Sephora, a cosmetics company and a brand under the LVMH group, closed its underperforming brick-and-mortar flagship stores, pivoting almost entirely to specialized digital storefronts to cut overhead costs. French retailer Carrefour sold off its remaining stakes in its China operations to local retail groups after facing years of losses. Walmart has closed numerous traditional hypermarkets, choosing instead to focus entirely on its high-end, membership-only Sam's Club locations. I won't give you more examples, but I think you get the point I'm trying to make, right? Foreign companies are leaving, and as a result, the white-collar workers or executives who used to work for these companies need to find another way to make a living. Now, naturally, the next question you may ask is, since China's GDP is still growing at 5% in 2025, it means there must be opportunities in other industries, right? Why not pivot and find a job in another growing industry? Well, in China, if you work for an employer, your employer may fall under one of these three categories. First one, the subsidiary of a foreign company in China. Second category, the government or a state-owned company. And the third category is a private company. From our earlier discussions, most excluded the first option, the subsidiary of a foreign company in China. It's not impossible, but very, very hard. You almost have to wait for another executive to retire to get a job opening, because in this economy, no one is resigning. How about working for a government or a state-owned company? Unfortunately, that option is hardly available for someone like Mr. B. To work for the government, you need to first pass a written examination, and the exam comes with age limits. Depending on your educational background, the age limit is 38 for someone with an undergraduate degree and 43 for someone with a master's degree or a PhD. This means for someone who is 47 years old, you're not even eligible to take the exam, which may or may not eventually lead to a job in the government. Now, let's assume for a second that Mr. B is under 38. Then the next battle to fight is to excel at the examinations. It's a standardized written test similar to GRE or GMAT, only with much lower pass rate. The pass rate in 2026 was 1.35%, which means for every 10,000 people who took the exam, only 135 people passed the test and got a government job. For some hot government positions, only 1 in every 7,000 exam takers got the job eventually. Normally, the prep time for the exam is between 9 to 11 months. It seems like working for the government is also off the table for Mr. B because he was 47 when he lost his last job. Finding a job at a state-owned company is also not easy. The corporate culture is different, and oftentimes the prerequisite to get an interview is that you need to be a party member. How about the third option, working for a private company in China? Well, the answer to this question is still complicated and cannot be explained only from a financial perspective. On the one hand, you have these established private companies like Huawei, BYD, or Tencent. On the other hand, you have these medium-sized companies or small startups. Many established tech giants like Alibaba or Temu are notorious for their brutal hours. They prefer younger employees who can work the 996 schedules. If you're unfamiliar with the term 996, it means you work from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. and work 6 days a week. In practice, it may not be 996. It may be 10-10-6 or 11-11-6. When you start in the morning may vary, but the constant is that you work 12 hours a day and 6 days a week. To be fair, the 12 hours normally includes a 2-hour lunch and dinner time. We're humans, we need to eat meals. And no one can be productive for 12 hours straight. So the 996 schedule is not as bad as it sounds, but it's still brutal. It means you almost have no time to yourself. And it's almost impossible for someone with a family like Mr. B. So that's off the table too. Because private companies tend to hire young employees. If you work for them, you need to be ready to report to someone who is perhaps 10 years younger than you are. That kind of dynamic between a manager and a much older subordinate can be tricky. The older subordinate may think his manager is just a kid who doesn't know anything. And the younger manager may consider the older subordinate unmalleable and slow to learn new things. And because of these challenges, these companies usually would not hire someone older to report to a younger manager. Aside from that, even if a job seeker is willing to accept a steep pay cut for a lower level job, the employer would still prefer someone younger and less experienced. Because the company worries that someone taking a pay cut to join the company may leave immediately if they find something better. I mean, nobody wants to be used as a stepping stone, right? For the sake of business continuity, recruiters won't even entertain the idea of interviewing someone who is quote unquote overqualified for the job. All of these is not unique in China. I'm sure recruiters have these same concerns in other countries too. Age discrimination may be universal, but it's blatant in China because there are no laws to protect employees from age discrimination. Just like there are age limits for government jobs, recruiters will put age limits in job ads, just like the age limits for the examinations, which may lead to a government job. You can often see something like that in a job ad. For people under 35 only. Seriously? The retirement age is postponed in so many provinces now, and the employable age is below 35? What are people supposed to do between 35 and 50? Or in some cases, between 35 and 60? For people in their late 40s in China, especially in big cities like Beijing and Shanghai, many have accumulated wealth during the real estate boom and bought a few apartments. They can now rent out the apartments and be a landlord. So why work the 996 schedule when you're not desperate for money? And that's exactly the situation Mr. B is in. He already bought multiple apartments in China. I'm guessing now you don't feel so bad for him, right? Last but not least, for many people who have worked for an employer for decades, it's refreshing and it gives you a sense of agency and meaning to work on your own thing and build your own company. This option of starting your own business is not available for everyone. To start a company, you need expertise and you need some seed money in general, right? And you also need to have some savings in the bank account in case your new company doesn't pan out. Not to mention, most companies don't make money at all in the first few years. So to sum up, for middle-aged white-collar workers or executives in China, once they lose their jobs, it's very hard nowadays to find another similar one at another foreign company which pays equally well and gives them the same status that they've grown used to. Government jobs have age limits, and you must pass an examination and be in the top 1% exam takers to get a job with the government. For many positions, you need to be a party member, which is also a prerequisite for many jobs with state-owned companies. For those who have accumulated wealth during the economic boom in China, it's hard to convince them that they must find a job, work like a slave, and report to someone they consider a kid. So that leads us to the conclusion. Starting his own business may be the one and only decent option for Mr. B. His new business is in the AI industry. To start this new AI company, he personally invested $75,000. But of course, the company is getting funding by investors. $75,000 is not a huge amount of money, but not everyone can afford it. For those who lost their jobs and don't have any savings in the bank account, the path looks very different. But that's a topic for another day. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.